We're about to start. Yes. Right. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, in accordance with Resolution 2-212, you are informed that Scott Steelson, Vincent Drive is recording tonight's meeting and posting on YouTube. This meeting is also available and being recorded electronically on the Zoom platform. So I see we do have a few people joining us today. Welcome. We're going to go to our open forum on action items. So what I'll do is, actually I'll start on Zoom first. Anyone on Zoom, if you have any questions on the agenda items? None? All right, let's start on this side of the room. Any questions on the agenda items?
I'm sorry. Can you read the rules of the
No, I did that last month. I think that's, we have it available on the back of the, and besides, we never did adopt it as a resolution, right?
So they're not.
Well, that's up to the board to decide. I don't think that was respectful or professional to put me through that exercise last month anyway. We adopted this in 1-2012, the Roberts Rules. You had some objections, I met you halfway on that in 2014, and we never amended it the second time. So I suggest these Roberts Rules again, based on what we had from Euclid Township, and it was attached to the agenda items in March of 2022. The board never acted on, never approved them. Okay?
Okay, so you believe that we have to rules?
We have a suggestion of following rules for order. If we want to adopt them formally, we can adopt them by resolution as we did in the past. If you attend meetings from other municipalities, you will find that they have an agenda item on the back of Robert's Rules. And often it follows the same template. From Roberts, it goes back to the Civil War, the general, and it's on the meeting side. And he broke the Robert's Rules. Standard business practice. It's not something that's forced on anybody, but it gives us some guidelines for an orderly meeting.
Right.
All right, anything further on that? Good,
Not right now.
okay. Let's move ahead. All right, action. Items, anything on this side for the agenda items? Any questions, comments, please? Please state your name and address. And we do have a timekeeper for 3 minutes.
Valerie Schultz, 165 Caitlin Court. A couple of questions. I see that on the agenda tonight is the resignation of at least, I believe, 4 out of the 5 Parks and Rec members. I would like to know, first of all, what the reasons are for why they have resigned, but I would also like to know what the board's plan is moving forward with whether or not they're going to replace them or whether they're going to disband Parks and Rec. The other question is, I see that D.R. Horton is going to be talking about, well, you guys will be talking about whether or not to require D.R. Horton to incorporate the Speedway as part of the open space. I think if we're going to continue talking about this open space, we need to address once and for all whether or not we're going to do another independent wetlands assessment to definitively identify where the wetlands are located, because I think according to your ordinance, there is something like up to 36 acres of open space that's usable that has to be provided to the township. And to date, the plans for D.R. Horton were 9 acres, and some of that was considered wetlands. So I'd like to know, if, and that was another agenda item that was proposed by a resident at the last meeting about the walkthrough by Ann Hutchinson.
Taking some of the items, so one of the things we did receive letters of resignation from some of the members. Do we have any comments on those, Warren, from the resignation letters?
I do not, and I would say if the board wants to know the reasons for the resignation, they should reach out directly to them.
And, okay, that was one item, so then another item that you brought up, okay.
And I would just hope that the board follow up and request that information, because I think that's important information for the supervisors to know.
Okay.
And then about D.R. Horton, about getting the independent wetlands assessment and, having Ann Hutchinson, walk the property.
So we do have a process to follow through on that. I have discussed with several residents to look ahead of time before the development starts. And Ann Hutchinson, and the last time I spoke to her, she gave us a summary of guidelines of what ordinances would be helpful to focus on. She gave an assessment of what was added subsequent, I should say, added to the most recent comp plan. And there were some good things that were added to the plan that we didn't have previously. As far as the availability of the workshop meeting, I support the workshop meeting. I feel that it is valuable to help the board prepare for the meeting. But I don't think Dan was even contacted on that particular request. So, Renee, did you hear anything from the township saying that? Okay.
No.
So you didn't reply to your request. Sorry, that should have happened.
Thank you, John.
Anyone else on this side for action items? Oh, we have to first make this.
Matthew Long, 3678 Horseshoe Pike. Just want to ask the board, to recommend keeping the racetrack. It's a good family, sport, everybody gets involved. Any questions, just ask.
And thanks for keep showing up and reminding us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sorry.
Mike Cody, 20 Caitlin Court. Under the new business, you have the approve, not approve the extension of DR Horton subdivision.
Yes.
I'm hoping that the supervisors will kind of look at that extension and kind of deny that extension. I think they're just behind time because of the way the economy's going.
Thank you, Mike, for your comment. Do I hear anyone else in the rear there? Go ahead, Karen.
Karen, that's force, I will not make access due to issues. Last time we were here at the board meeting, I felt very disrespected by Laura when she kept nudging me to read the rules of, we're all adults here, the rules and conduct is on all the ends at the back of the page, and to have you redirect us on how we should, talk to people. But I give you respect, you give me respect back. But I think that was totally out of line. We have not been, mean, nasty. And there's been times when, there's going to be times when people get upset.
Yes.
So suck it up, buttercup.
Thank you for your comment. I think that should go. If it's in addition to other items, go ahead.
So I guess just going back to item 12 on the agenda, the acceptance of the resignations.
Yes.
I guess more a statement than anything. The Parks and Rec were given this wonderful opportunity with 30 acres to go ahead with DR Horton with the possibilities that was the first area that Parks and Rec were going to be doing, and now 3 of them resigned. If and when the township goes out to the board of supervisors, will they tell the residents? Would that be something that would be told to us at a workshop? And then what happens to the committee?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what would be told to the residents? What are you asking?
Like the resignations, did it have something to do with the DR Horton project? Because these were all men that were established in the community. One was, in the Little League, and they were talking about all the different park options, they were invested in it, and now they've resigned. So then who, with that expertise, then takes this whole thing forward?
Parks and Rec started in 2012, and we've been fortunate over the years that we've had participation. Initially, it took nearly 6 months to get it up and running, but it's been the dedication of a core group of people, and after 10 years, we saw most of them have moved on. But those who have followed through, they've also provided, level of dedication for whatever reasons, and we'll find out. But I would feel that Parks and Rec is vital to the municipality, and the advice is coming from the residents, and we can use that advice.
So possibly in the next workshop, the residents would know?
If I may, I mean, I think it's not the board's prerogative to share individuals' reasons with the public. I do agree that the township and the board should understand what was happening. And if those people, kind of for the good of the township, have a legitimate reason that they're willing to allow the board to share with the public, I think that's reasonable, potentially for the good of the township to understand the situation.
Okay, then maybe my question should be, where does the board then take it as far as the committee? Because if there's not really a committee or there's only one member, then how do we address Parks and Rec?
At the moment, we don't have a functioning board or committee.
So then that would be necessary.
Yes.
We could recruit volunteers.
Yes,
You want to
we
be
can.
on Parks and Rec?
I'd like to know what's going on with Parks and Rec.
Yes.
So we're gonna put it out for advertisement like we had in the past, that there's openings, and ask for people to turn in an application, a letter of interest, and a resume to the township, and that information will be forwarded to the board, and the board can appoint those officials, or people to the board.
Okay, so then my only concern with that is that when you have 3 people resign, is there an underlying problem?
I spoke to 2 of the 3, there's not. There's reasons that we don't like to share with the public, but it has nothing to do with their positions on the board. Personal issues, family issues, other responsibilities that have nothing to do with anything that occurred as their position. Now, again, I will also tell you, they're members of the public. You can find their phone numbers. If someone is that concerned, I'm sure you could reach out to them, and they're very friendly people. They will, I'm sure, gladly talk to you.
Yeah, they were wonderful.
So reach out to them, I'm sure, they'd like to hear from you. I know Scott Wynant is, he's still going to be participating with the township, and he's going to attend many meetings. He's going to do cleanups, and he's going to be an active member of the community. So I don't think you're going to see anybody disappear. But show up and see when they show up and have a conversation with them. They're very nice people.
Thanks, Mark.
But haven't given them a shot, try to give them a call, reach out, Facebook friend them, I don't know, buy them coffee.
Thanks.
I have a
Go
question.
ahead.
If you could speak to the denial of an extension, I mean, is that legal? We can just deny someone's extension, but what's the legality of that?
I mean, we can maybe talk about that a little more on that item, but in general, the board, there's a legal standard, where a developer is diligent in pursuing its process and its application, the township has an obligation to kind of work with them on that. If they're doing nothing, that's a different matter. If you are going to deny a plan, you have to cite specific reasons in that denial that have to be documented in writing as to why the plan is being denied at that time.
Okay, so there's legal findings that have to be, or to
Correct.
deny an extension. All right, thank you.
All right, and just a reminder, when we go to the next open forum at the end of the meeting, if you keep your comments to 3 minutes, if you need more time, just ask for it. We could adjourn the meeting and then give you as much time as you want. Go ahead, Adam.
Is it okay to talk about new business, or questions on new business?
No, just the action items now. So if you're looking at something,
That's on the agenda.
okay, yes, so that's, go right ahead.
Adam Slowick, 2415 Chestnut Tree Road. I have a quick question. Number 6 under section G, the approved and not approved extension of time. Is that to approve, not to approve a new development plan, the current existing plan? Are they modifying the plan? I just would hope to get a little bit more detail, a little more context and clarity with number 6.
Can we address that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the DR Horton has submitted a preliminary plan to the township for a land development on the tract that's referenced here.
And that's the plan that's currently under file, right?
Correct. And
Okay.
so what's requested is simply a time extension to keep that plan alive, essentially continue through the review process with the plan as submitted. You know, we've spoken other meetings for those who've been here. There's going to be an iterative process of resubmissions, revisions as they come into compliance with our ordinances along the way. But what's, essentially, the state law gives you 90 days from the time they submit a plan for the township to either approve or deny it, which might work for a small little building in a parking lot, but not even typically. So the 90-day timeframe by law is very short, especially for any kind of large development like this. So the time extension that the developer offers allows the board to not have to make a approval or denial decision, but continue dialogue.
And the current board has the authority to either grant or deny that extension, correct? The current plan that's on file,
Correct.
the extension, okay. And if the board decides to grant or deny, it just either A, allows them more time, or B, they have to start all over again and submit a completely new plan. Whether it's the same plan again, or they have to start all over, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that'll be it for right now. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question for Beth. What would be, like a reason that the township would potentially deny an extension? Like a typical legal reason that you would have, because you can't just do whatever.
If there had been no activity by the developer.
No activity for an extended period of time.
Correct. Which, I mean, just candidly, I will tell you is not the case here. I mean, there's another agenda item on tonight's agenda related to that plan, because they're seeking guidance from the township, because they're looking to make a resubmission. You know, that's what they've shared with staff, and so they're just trying to understand the township's wants, and they have been in communication. So I would definitely recommend that the posture of that plan is not one that really is legally defensible.
Okay. And then when you said review the plan, you meant like address the letter that Mike wrote with, what was it, 3 pages?
36.
36 items?
36 pages.
36 pages, sorry. Okay. So that would be addressing those 36 pages.
Correct.
So, I mean, that would be a potential to ask for time extension. Okay.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name's Paul K. Thompson Sr. I live at 440 Evergreen Drive in Delhi. When I moved there, I was told that the township had designated different portions of the property there that were open space that could never be developed. They're in the process of trying to get approval by the township to build X number of new cottages. I just want to make sure, or be told, that none of those portions of ground that are designated open space are going to be developed.
We didn't have a meeting with Talhide, and that was one of the things, the Woodlands area. That was an area that we agreed to several years ago with the understanding that any future expansion would not disrupt that buffer. And in the recent plan, they were looking to expand in that area, and the township said, no, we would not allow that to happen. We held firm on that stipulation.
All 3 of us held firm on that stipulation that Woodlands would not be developed.
Okay, but any of the other portions?
Well, we could take the time to show you what areas, but I think we have to move ahead with the meeting right now.
Okay.
But I would be glad to go over that with you.
So what you're saying, you possibly will approve some of that area that's open space to be developed.
So if I may, the board did enter an agreement with Telhi in December of last year to amend the prior settlement agreement with Telhi related to development of the property. That matter then went to a zoning hearing because the zoning hearing board had to formally grant certain zoning relief for the changes that the board was in favor of in cooperation with Telhi. So the zoning hearing is where the actual decision on some of those changes was made. And
Will that meeting be open?
that meeting has already occurred with the zoning hearing board, and they did grant the relief that Telhi was seeking. There is not a written decision issued yet. That will happen probably within the next month's time. But the agreement that was approved by the board in December is a public record that's available, to the public to see and view what that looks like.
So the township did approve using some of that open space for development.
I'm not going to speak to exactly what it is. There are changes to the plan.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, we move to the consent agenda. Before we do on item 2, because oh, I'm sorry, sure. Go ahead.
Yep. All right. Good evening. Shane Haddon, 410 North Middle Road.
Yes.
First off, John, I appreciate your flexibility during this public comment period. But in general, I just want to say that the rules of conduct are really insufficient to facilitate healthy and effective public discourse here in township meetings. Giving people just 3 minutes to comment, not ask questions. I know you can have a lot of comments tonight, I appreciate that, but it says in there, people may not ask questions. But with matters that are about to be decided, and there's little to no background information given often or shared ahead of time, it doesn't create a real trusting environment with all us neighbors. When requests for background materials are made and they're denied, that only further drives mistrust. People need to know what's going on and they need to have their concerns heard. I understand that having and enforcing these rules can make meetings move faster, but everybody who sits up there, even on the committees, they've been entrusted with a position of leadership and service to the community. And sometimes doing a good job of that means taking more time and to listen more thoroughly. At the start of each Land Preservation Committee meeting, I've been basically announcing to everybody that you can answer questions or ask questions, join the discussion whenever you feel like it. Because I found it's important to me that everybody has their questions answered, and can leave, if they're not feeling fully satisfied with what happened, at least leave feeling heard. And communicating that to everybody and standing by it has established like a nice, calm, and civil tone in the room that every meeting. People come to these meetings because they care about this township, and all of us take time out of our lives to come here because we really care about what gets decided in this room. We're all neighbors here. We all worry about the future of this township and our families. Not too long ago, we could ask questions during these meetings at pretty much any point. I remember Bob asking questions all the time, often questions that I had as well. As somebody who was coming to these meetings for the first time, didn't have a lot of background in what was going on. So, I'd appreciate it if things worked like that and worked like this generally in the future, and that if we kind of changed our rules of conduct to be a bit less draconian.
I expect that tonight there would be more discussion since we did not have our workshop. Next week is also an opportunity for people to speak. There will not be a lot of constraints on the town hall meeting. So if you're interested in that, also we'll have the Zoom available for that meeting as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yep. Well, since I won't have a chance to ask about it later too, for agenda item G6, I just want to say, they're a big, powerful, well-funded company, and if they can't get their act together by the established deadline, that's too bad as far as I'm concerned. They want to know what the township wants from them, and I think most of us in the township really want for them to just go away. So, and I would say if they need a reason to deny them, we can say we're denying them, because they're trying to build on what has been scientifically established as a wetland.
Okay.
And that's it for agenda items. Thank you very much.
All right. We're at the consent agenda. Just a comment on item 2, we do have on page 28 of the manager report, mention the 5-year build-out and best practice review. We moved from first to second quarter, so we're running out of time on the second quarter. Also for the website redevelopment, that was moved from first to second quarter, and again, we're at May, June's coming up quickly. Also, on that, there's a comment, there's no website launch date available. But other than that, I see no other comments on the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Let's go to the department reports. We don't have public works, so Christie, would you update us?
Yes, thank you. Dawn did give me some items to share. The roads crew has finished the stormwater project on Beaver Dam Road as of April 26. We had plenty of rain recently, so road mowing has begun. We do have a new operator on the mower this year, so please be patient and do not pass the mower when there is not sufficient sight distance to see oncoming traffic, please. Spot seal coating is going to take place this week, weather permitting, and so far so good. And that's all for Don's report.
Thank you for that report. Now, Christie, go ahead with the administrative report.
Okay, thank you. The Honeybrook Community Partnership met yesterday. 2 high school seniors were selected for $750 scholarships. They will be presented to them at a ceremony later this month. The welcome signs will be spruced up with new logos that have been printed up. Anybody who may have seen those coming in to the area, they've started to peel and show their age because they were erected in 2013, I believe. So it's time for a facelift, and so that will be happening this month. And the other big topic of conversation is Harmony Day, which is the 3rd Saturday in September, as usual. The theme is connecting our community, and the day will feature activities at a variety of sites in both the township and borough. And I was asked specifically what the township would like to offer. Now, I had that as an agenda item on the Rec and Park Board agenda, but of course the meeting was canceled. So on the spot, I didn't really have anything to offer because, it's just me, but I do know that we have a very active pickleball group. So I think I'll reach out to some folks there and see if they would be interested in hosting a clinic or doing a demonstration or something like that. I know there's at least 30 people that meet every Tuesday and Thursday up at the park to play pickleball. So that's an easy thing that we don't really have to plan much for. But so that was my on my feet thinking on that score. So any other suggestions are welcomed, of course. With warmer weather comes the return of insects, including the dreaded mosquito, and the Chester County Health Department sent our office information about their mosquito control program. They have a couple of different types of traps that they have set throughout the county, and they are monitoring those for signs of the West Nile virus. So if they detect any specimens with the West Nile virus, they will set up some more traps, see if they can get more data, and then if it's enough of a concentration, they will do some mitigation work, whether that means spraying or something like that. But that is what the Chester County Health Department is doing for all of us. Something behind the scenes that we wouldn't otherwise know unless they told us. So if you see some funky looking toolboxes with black trays under them or a blue barrel in the woods, that is what those are. So please don't disturb them. Lastly, please be advised that the Township Administration Office is closed to walk-up traffic on Tuesday, May 16, due to the municipal primary. And all the township offices are closed on Monday, May 29, in observance of Memorial Day. And that is all I have.
All right, thanks. And congratulations on the presentation at BSATs. And some of our supervisors made it. I was under the weather at the time. Thank you. We
Yes,
got,
Laura and I thought we both thought you did a nice job.
It's not a very exciting.
I made it interesting, and I like the little slides they gave from Honeycomb.
Yes.
there you go. We now turn to Warren Bisky for the Township Manager report.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but to address some of the points you brought up, John.
Yes.
The 5-year build-out has been completed. Obviously, that was part of the fall budget process. The second quarter is just reviewing the best practices.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. The best practices are just how we push the financials through, and we are just trying to catch up with the contractor to ensure that we get it perfected, so there's a little bit more time. The website redevelopment, I had asked for feedback from board members and some administrative staff. Some responses were a little bit late, so that pushed back my ability to give that feedback to the website developer. Additionally, our current DNS host and web developer was a little late in getting Civic Plus, the required information to start transferring to that website. So there is no completion date because we're waiting on third parties that we currently use to get Civic Plus the information they need to start moving the process forward. So they received that information earlier this week, and I don't know how much on the back end it is going to start taking them to provide us a website for our viewing.
All right. Thank you for those updates. All right, that's it. Concludes that report. We'll go to Land Preservation Committee. Shane, do you have anything to offer tonight?
Walk back up. Again, for everybody who hasn't seen them, at the back of the room are the current township maps that show where we started, where we were in the middle, and where we are today in terms of ground that has been permanently preserved and can never be developed. The total acreage preserved right now is 5,311 acres, and we are hoping to add another 24. We reviewed an applicant at the last meeting on Beaver Dam Road who has 6 building lots that are already subdivided. We looked at this project a couple of times over the years. We did not feel comfortable moving forward with it when it originally was presented because the costs were out of alignment with what we'd previously done with other projects. The project's kind of come back to us through Brandywine Conservancy instead of Natural Lands this time. It's a much better deal for the township at this point, so we're recommending that we move forward with it at this time. It would cost us about $76,000 and change. It would be a good place to get covered. And we are continuing to work with some other landowners to try to get some more applications going this year. Secondly, we discussed the change in Pennsylvania law that technically allows for the use of reallocation of land preservation funds to be used for things other than land preservation. And our decision, basically, or our recommendation is as follows. The change in Pennsylvania state law that allows for new uses of land preservation funds is not in alignment with the language of the original Honeybrook Township Land Preservation Referendum. The Land Preservation Committee supports the continued usage of land preservation funds only for the original intended uses of the acquisition of development rights and the voluntary acquisition of land to prevent development in the township. And lastly, looking at calendars and looking at when application deadlines happen, we decided that we ought to move our July meeting to August 15th so that we would have applications to review. As in July, they may not be in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Becky.
It was good.
Those woodlots are in the Barren Hill Woodlands, right?
Correct. It's adjacent to the William Penn State Forest, or the secret park up there.
Yeah, that's your part, right?
All right, the planning commission. Mike?
Yes, thank you. I don't believe there's anyone here tonight from the Planning Commission, but I'll just go over, we have a busy agenda coming up for this month, just to read a couple of those items. 2707 Cambridge Minor Subdivision has been submitted for review. We've also received the cemetery for Cambridge Mennonite Church, that's off of Meadville Road. Will be reviewed, as well as a Twin County Industrial Park extension of Westbrook Drive. It's 7 industrial lots that will be reviewed. That was under the name of a different project, the Westbrook Land Development, is now Twin County Industrial Park. We also have 2 variance applications, one for a kennel and one for an accessory dwelling unit. And then we will also review the subdivision land development ordinance amendments at the next meeting as well. Do you have any questions related to those?
I don't think so. Tracy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I assume there's no update from Parks and Rec. Chris, do you have anything on that?
I do have one thing. The litter pickup day was a washout. It was pouring.
Yeah.
So it will be this Saturday. So be at 8:30 a.m. here in the parking lot, and folks will gather and be distributed gloves, vests, garbage bags, and then fan out to pick up trash along the roadsides.
What's the weather report?
It's supposed to be nice until the evening,
Good.
so we lucked out.
Thank you.
Is there going to be safety signs as well? I think they're looking at.
Yes, yes.
In the event that it gets canceled, who would be the person? Because Ray is out. He's out of town. And who would make the call on that? Do you know?
Well, I've been in touch with Kevin and Scott,
Yeah.
so I think they're the ones that actually were heading it up. So once we get past Friday, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, new business. Approved, not approved, list of bills, payment, and as prepared by the treasurer. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2, request, not request, D.R. Horton included Honeybrook Speedway 2177 Horseshoe Pike as part of the required open space parkland dedicated to Township for Apartment Glen project.
So I can sort of take the lead on this. There was a staff meeting a week ago that had been requested by D.R. Horton with their engineer and Mike and Warren and I to basically look at, there have been a number of zoning issues on limited scope. We're not doing everything in the zoning ordinance, but there were some interpretations that Mike had made in his letter that they didn't understand. So we've had a little back and forth with the developer over time and just sat down to make sure that they understood the way the township was applying its rules, because they are looking to submit a new preliminary plan. As part of that discussion, they again sort of said, does the township definitely want to keep the racetrack? And I think, that was put on the table in some of those early meetings, but it was it was really only before the township in limited scope. And I think it was a concept that hadn't been thoroughly gone through, to the extent they're looking to resubmit a plan that may or may not contain that. They're looking for feedback from the board. I in that meeting, in some conversations with the manager, have said, I don't have an opinion. The board should do what it wants, but I think the board should at least think about a few legal factors, which include, liability, insurance costs, and long-term, maintenance of the facility. But the other piece, kind of from a non-legal standpoint, was, how does this affect the land that's being laid out from a park standpoint? I think there was conversation about what types of facilities, and I know that was sort of handed to Parks and Rec, and I don't think we ever got to them making the real recommendation, because some of the staffing limitations that have occurred. But, you know, I kind of said to them, can you throw together two concepts? One that shows keeping the track, and one that envisions some of the area you're looking to dedicate, you know, if you didn't have the track, just to give the board a visual. None of it is set in stone. Do you have those?
Yes, I do. So this one is just, the outline is essentially
That's the area.
just the area. They wanted to make sure you had an understanding. And then they showed us two plans, which they colored. So the first plan shows the racetrack in place here. And then they're kind of showing the facilities. And I can go back and forth. So that is the sketch plan they threw together showing it with the speedway. And then they sent a second one, which shows the amenities that they could provide to us should the speedway not be present in that parklands space that they would dedicate to the township.
So, you know, to the extent they've asked for guidance, I mean, I will lead with saying they don't have to keep a racetrack. But I think they're open to it and willing, if it is in fact what the township wants. I think trying to just kind of visualize what it could look like, you know, from some standpoint, I do think keeping the track disjoins the pieces of the park. But that's, you know, if it's what the township wants, so be it. But from a legal standpoint, I mean, my biggest concerns, and they're all things that can be navigated, but I just want the board to have thought about it, is liability. You know, under the Pennsylvania Tort Claims Act, government has immunity, except real estate is one of the exceptions for liability. And so if there's things that are happening on real estate that is owned by the township, even if it's leased, you know, I think as a township, we have an obligation to have an eye on what's happening there. And this is no disrespect to anyone that's involved in the track today, but if the township takes this land, keeps the track, you know, part of the question becomes long-term. You know, there's good folks that are doing this today, but long-term, you know, this gentleman is no longer involved. You know, if the organization no longer uses this Honeybrook facility, what happens to it? And so I just wanted to kind of make sure that the township is thinking through those things. You know, any type of lease that we would enter for that is something we have to think about what terms the township would want, make sure that whoever's in there has the ability to meet the township's requirements. So, you know, I said to D.R. Horton, we'll put it on the agenda to get some feedback from the board. You know, I just kind of wanted to open that up to you guys to see if there's a direction at this point that you want them to take, because they're going to submit a plan, and it will either include the track and try to work around it with park and rec facilities. And I think the amount of land that they're dedicating may not change, but to the extent they're willing to propose, you know, basketball courts, pickleball courts, multi-purpose fields, walking paths, some of that, you know, how that space is used does change if the track stays. So that's kind of it, is you know, they asked us what the township wants, and we said, we're not the township, you know, you guys are the board. Obviously, planning and park and rec, when they're functioning, have ability to make recommendations on some of this, but at the moment, D.R. Horton is looking to move forward with putting something on paper to put back before the planning commission, and we're looking for feedback from the board at this point as to what they're. So I'll stop talking.
So Tracy, do you have any comments on that?
Could we extend this to when we have a three-member board? I mean, could we have an extension on making this decision?
I mean, we can ask them for more time. I don't know what their timeline is for resubmission, but I know they're eager. I don't know if Mike has any more information.
I don't.
I mean, I think their goal is to not fully engineer facilities and a design and then have the township change course on them and say, well, actually, no, never mind. Because in, you know, I suppose at any point, you know, like I said, there's nothing that can require them to leave the track. And maybe the response is, if you're not sure, tell them to leave it. Because if down the road you want to change your mind, they have every legal right to not keep the track. You know, if that's not what the board wants. But if there's concerns or, you know, meetings that maybe it's not a good idea already, you know, I just kind of wanted to open it up for discussion. Because we, essentially staff weren't in a position to answer that question. Because it was very much an initial conversation. I know there were some public folks that, you know, interested in keeping the track. I know it's been here for decades.
Well, one of the things that I'm concerned about, the location of this park area and the size of it, because it doesn't quite meet what, based on the ordinance, so that's a concern right there. We did have the discussion in the planning commission about proximity of this park to a highway, the dangers. I don't think that's been addressed. We did have an opportunity to speak to the association of the Speedway, and I think there was a commitment, you know, not a solid commitment, but, you know, we did give you the assurance that we do feel that it's a value to the community, and that we would like to see it remain. So that I don't think that we want to back away from that, but given the light of so many things here, my concern is that whether we build out around that speedway or we have those courts there and all that, I just don't feel that's going to be a very safe location for the recreation activity that will be offered. That's a concern of mine.
So you're not making a commitment whether or not they should keep the speedway, you're saying you like the whole area?
I'm throwing something out there that, yeah, I don't think this is the ideal location for a park that's been raised, and I don't think it was ever adequately addressed as to, you know, kids crossing the street, crossing the highway, you know, they're playing basketball, some of those chasing after basketball onto the street. I mean, there's some concerns there. You know, would there be safety fencing and other things like that? There were expectations of getting recommendations from Park and Rec, but we didn't get that. So yeah, I think that, to your point, that we should get a further deliberation on this. But as I said, just looking at that map and 322, with the volume of developments coming up, this is going to get more and more congested and dangerous.
Okay, well, if you change the location of the parkland, that would potentially be for the township. That would then possibly move it away from the racetrack.
Yeah. We did ask that question one time about possibility of moving that racetrack, and that'd be difficult, not, yeah, logical to do, but.
So,
yeah.
you know, I will say, none of this dictates that what's here doesn't mean they've necessarily dedicated a proper amount of area.
Right.
But this is where they proposed it, and I will say that from where you're going to put a township park, probably nestled in the heart of this development, doesn't make a lot of sense. The residents of this development don't want probably all of the traffic to a township park coming past their house every day to go to soccer practice. So from an accessibility standpoint, just, I think through the design process, making sure there are safety features, fencing, some of those types of things, that would be a second step. So, but I suspect that if you say, we don't want the park here, they're going to try to put houses here, including where the track is. And we didn't have that conversation, but I mean, that is their prerogative on a piece of land, and there is land here that is usable. I mean, if you don't want a township park here, you know, there's fee in lieu contributions that they can do instead of that, and then they'll just probably add houses.
So the safety of the families that are going to be using that park, to me, I think that's a critical item. You know, as it stands right now, you know, you can listen to the proposal, but as this thing has evolved, I think some of those concerns have really become more apparent. You know, it's just having a park for the sake of having a park, but it may not be ideal. So To Tracy's point, I don't think the board is in a position to make a response to the question that was asked tonight.
But from what I heard, if I understood what you said, the exact layout, the exact fencing is not what we're talking about right now. It's not. I mean, pretty much, if we want to keep the racetrack, it has to be in this area, right? And that's obvious, because otherwise we're have to get rid of the racetrack. If you want it in the middle of the development, in the middle somewhere, it's the racetrack goes. Like she said, they're going to put houses there.
Well, does the park have to surround the racetrack?
Excuse me?
Does the park have to surround the racetrack?
Does the park have to surround the racetrack in this layout?
Yeah, it does, and that's what I'm saying, it's, just looking at the location, I have some strong concerns there. And it will be what it will be, but if we don't raise these concerns now, once they start putting the bulldozers through there, it'll be too late. I think that's something we really have to think about. I don't think we're going to be able to
I'm in
resolve.
favor of keeping the racetrack there, because I remember it from when I was, I mean, I didn't grow up in anywhere but Honeybrook, and I remember it from when I was a kid walking past with my cousins, my aunt lived around the corner.
So you're making a commitment on the racetrack tonight. I thought you said you wanted to wait till we have the full board.
I think it would be better to let Laura have an opinion,
Right.
and maybe get some opinions from the residents. But I don't believe that exactly what the safety fencing is, and, you know, I think you're talking about something that they're not
I
asking.
think at this point, we decided we're not going further. I'm throwing out a safety concern. We can keep going back and forth, but we've got a full agenda ahead of us. So we can go ahead and put this on the agenda for our next meeting of floor participation.
We have enough time to talk about it next month.
I mean, we can continue to talk about that. I would like to at least get feedback from this meeting. There's a public meeting that they could be tuned in. I don't, you can watch it on YouTube. I mean, I think it's safe to say that there is still, you know, there's no firm commitment at this point, but there remains among board members interest in keeping the track.
I think
Is
we
that
have
fair?
We have a commitment, but you said the layout and everything right now, I got some concerns, so.
And I can relate that there's, you know, questions and concerns about overall layout, safety, et cetera, that will have to be addressed. So, and I'm only asking because, you know, again, sort of some feedback I think is appropriate, where I can at least, it's not this is a done deal, because at the end of the day, it's their burden to give you a plan that gets approved. But through the process, you know, if you have wants, it's better to raise them sooner than later.
So at the end of the day, the park, if we keep the racetrack, could look completely different than this design. This is
Correct.
simply something that they're throwing out.
Correct.
It could be 100% of it.
It could be.
We don't even know if this park is big enough for.
We don't know if the road layout that they've proposed, you know, is fixed in stone either, because they may end up with PennDOT issues when they go to get a highway occupancy permit. Maybe that driveway isn't a place that they can even get a driveway, but I think they've probably done enough initial work to think it does. But, I mean, there's lots of outside approvals that would be part of this project that may move things throughout, but to the extent the township has opinions, they'd like to start factoring them in sooner than later. Okay. That's all.
Thank you, Ben. Go to item 3. Approve, not approve the parent low bidder for snowplow with operator.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Well, hold on, because there's nothing to approve.
Yeah.
So we had no bids.
No, okay. And this was the second bid, so, Beth, where can we go from here?
I think after the second bid, you can
Just,
hire, you don't have to bid.
again, we can
Still
just
find
hire a
services.
contract.
Okay.
Is this far over like Mountain Air Village way?
It's on Mountain View on the other side, and depending on the snow levels, they could use them for other places. But typically it's on the far ends, that's not advantageous for township staff to get over for parking constraints.
Item 4, approve or not approve the repair to the 2015 case backhoe at an estimated cost of $30,000.
So what happened on May 1st, they were using the backhoe to take it down to Beaver Dam and remove a tree. Something happened apparently with the electronic shifter. It went from fourth to first. It caused a catastrophic damage to the engine. There was some warranty issues, brand new back in 2015 about this particular incident. So I'm currently working with the service center who did the repair and hopefully working with Case to see if they could cover some costs. Additionally, our insurance company, while it's not a vehicle accident, they believe they're willing to look into it to see if there's somehow can tie it back to the initial warranty. So they're actually willing to send out an adjuster and work with the repair shop to try to determine what actually caused the failure, and if they can kind of link it back to maybe this repair many years ago. It might give us a little bit more of a standing to see if we can negotiate the cost of repairing. The vehicle was purchased new at $125,000. Used ones are going for about 80 if you can find them. The road department does utilize this on a continual basis, so it would be essential to repair it. We do have funds in our capital reserve. Obviously, it was not budgeted, and due to the amount, it's for the board to at least, again, I'm not making a final decision at this point, but, you know, whatever we come back to negotiate, if it's lower, I'll obviously report that back. But should we just find we don't have footing, the repair bill of about $30,000 due to that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so that's item 4. Item 5, we go to grant, not grant, or request to waive land development by the Northwestern Chester County Municipal Authority for 37 Dampton Road, tax parcel number 22-8-8.3E.
John, I think we have Jason Leonard on the
Yes.
Zoom from HRG, so I'll turn it over to him if that's okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
The Northwestern Chester County Municipal Authority is proposing some upgrades to their existing wastewater treatment plant. This is based on some recent Act 537 planning that's required some magnification upgrades to the project back to the wastewater treatment plant. And they're requesting waiver for LD because the project is minor development associated with the existing public utility and existing developed lot. We are submitting or have submitted an PDS permit to the Conservation District and DEP for approval, and we will also be submitting a stormwater management plan to the township for approval by their engineer. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the project, if you have any.
I think you covered it pretty good. You have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Yeah, the improvements trigger land development, John. In the past, we have granted waivers to the land development process, given it is an authority project, and provided that they do stormwater management. The Planning Commission agreed and recommended the same to waive land development.
Good. All right, thank you, Jason. Thank you. All right, do I hear a motion to grant?
I'll make the motion to grant.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're up to item 6. Approve, not approve, an extension of time for the DR Horton subdivision and land development plan, Arbor's Edge, tax parcel number 22-8, 53, 22-865.5, and the extension to August 10th, 2023. We had some comment earlier on that. Any questions on it? We have, do you want to make a motion to approve, or do you want discussion on this?
I feel like we had some discussion, obviously, before we got to this point.
Yes.
Do you want to reiterate again what some legal requirements are for us to deny an extension?
So, again, I mean, in terms of denying the time extension, procedurally, if you deny the time extension, that means that this is the last meeting that the board is going to meet before their plan would either have to be approved or rejected. And so if you deny the time extension, you then will also need to take action on the plan, because if you don't do so, it will be a deemed approval exactly as submitted, which would, be very problematic, because they have not gone through all of the detailed efforts that are going to be required to make sure that this is done properly. The other option, if the time extension is not granted, is to deny the plan. But that's really the standard that I was referencing earlier, that the township has an obligation to engage with them where they are continuing to diligently pursue approvals and revisions. And I will say from my perspective and what I have seen, that has been occurring because they have been in communication with Mike's office, their attorney with my office on some legal questions, diligently, probably almost weekly over the past several months in anticipation of trying to comply with the 36 pages. And so I will tell you that I think that a denial would not be upheld by the law and really does not accomplish the township's goals. Because as was referenced, they could just resubmit a brand new plan and that gets us nowhere. I think everyone's time is better spent making them comply with the ordinances because this is a development that is permitted by right on this tract. That is huge. So my recommendation to the board would be to grant the time extension to August.
So we have a legal obligation to follow the rules and follow the law. We can't just sort of do what we would like to do.
I mean, there's case law, and this township has been involved in cases where bad faith plan denials, went on appeal. The township spent tens of thousands of dollars on legal challenges and ultimately lost. So, I mean, bad faith obviously can factor in if you are aware that there's.
So if there's not a strong reason right now to deny it.
I mean, what I would say to the board is there's going to be opportunities through the process that lies ahead to chart the course of what this looks like and make them toe the line on things. This, in my mind, this is not the issue to hang your hat on because it doesn't actually get you. It doesn't make them leave. It just makes the township look like you're not following the law, and I wouldn't recommend this.
So do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant the time extension.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All right, so that takes care of, okay, our new business. So other new business, we've had a request for a referendum on 2 questions. One of them to extend the board of supervisors from 3 to 5. From a timing perspective, we have to get that presented to the board by June, and advertising it by July has to be approved by the board in order to get it on the ballot for November. Is that the correct timeline?
I believe so.
Okay. So I did hear the one question, the board from 3 to 5. I don't have in front of me the notes. So there was a second item that we were considering. There was a discussion on that. Did you open that?
Yeah, I think there were 2 other items. There was one about land preservation, money being used for Parks and Rec, and then whether or not the township would like to consider a regional police force.
I think we said regional police before we would do a referendum on
That's
that.
the question to me.
Yep.
You're asking.
So I think what you and I discussed, as far as the police department, we can't do that for a referendum. I think that was response.
Correct, right. There's no, you can only do referendums on topics that are specifically authorized by state law for townships to have referendums on those issues. So, correct, something like the police force is not, that type of a public survey of whether there's interest is not one that's authorized.
All right. Then for the other item, we add that to this potential referendum question. That was the use of the land preservation fund. to authorize, is it to authorize or not authorize? Well,
Whether or not the
I'm
public,
sorry.
whether or not the public is okay with using land, up to 25% of the land preservation funds for Parks and Rec.
I mean, that is something that essentially modifying the EIT that's being collected for land preservation would be done by referendum.
Yeah.
If you choose to do that.
And would that in fact be a modification of the EIT though, because according to the law, you're allowed to use money that is set aside for parks and recreation, or land preservation rather, as parks and recreation. So would that be a modification of the EIT?
So you could do under the statute, the language, and I mean, our office has looked at this multiple times in the township, because there have been questions over time about changing the amount of the tax. The statute basically says you can create the tax, or you can repeal the tax. And so there is some gray area of how anything, it's not just those two clear cuts, start it for a purpose and repeal it. Look, I mean, I think if you want to make it crystal clear, you put a referendum item that is, do you want to repeal the EIT tax that's in place? And do you want to establish a 0.5% EIT tax for open space, preservation, agricultural preservation, and park maintenance? I mean, if that's what you want to do.
Well, if the goal
Or,
is.
I mean, but I mean, and other municipalities in recent years have done some combined referendum that sort of is a modification, and I think you could do it that way if you wanted to. I do think that ultimately it is cleaner and more legally defensible if you're going to change it, to do it by referendum. I mean, I think that eliminates the gray of any question as to whether, a referendum for the law changed until after. I think it is defensible to do it, but, the law can be gray. And there's nothing statutorily that provides for this circumstance, and there's not really precedent on it. So the cleanest way would be to do it by referendum, if it's something that you want to do to create that net maintenance fund. If there's no interest in doing that at this point, then we don't need it.
I think the purpose is that what was originally approved was originally presented to the community as a specific purpose, as the public meetings stated. So subsequent to the law change, but we didn't necessarily get the feedback from the residents. We felt that it would be only fair to say, if you're spending this money, giving this money in that direction, that there should be some clarification. I say again, Doug.
Well, a week ago, when Tracy was at the meeting that we had at the Lions Club, this was brought up based on the fact that before in the township, we used to have a say in where the money was being spent for parks and recreation. Now they want to allocate $200,000 for a new skateboard park, when Humboldt Park is crumbling in ruins. The tennis courts are falling apart, it needs to be updated, but you want to start another park at a $200,000 price tag. We aren't even maintaining the current parks in the township adequately, and people are getting injured. John twisted his ankle playing tennis out there because the tennis courts need to be repaired, and it's been several years and nothing's been addressed. So it's brought to the attention, and I was told we couldn't approach you about a referendum based on the fact it wasn't a public hearing or meeting that we're having tonight. And the land preservation gentleman said they rewrote the laws for the land preservation funds. And he stated the original earmark was for open space. That was it. Not to take, and you guys spend our money that we're dedicating out of our taxes for open space and put it into parks without our say. And I thought, why can't you put it on a ballot and ask the people and the residents, we the people of Honeybrook, where we want our tax dollars that was earmarked for open space to be spent. Not you dictate where our money is being spent, $200,000 for a skateboard park or a pickleboard park, and you just keep spending the money, and it was $1.2 million when Steve Landis was here,
to take down the dilapidated playground in the back where the person was raped, the drug stuff was being done in Humboldt Park. And we had a bunch of Amish that were volunteering to remove that area and save the taxpayers $1.2 million from open space. And we were all going to sign a waiver so that the township wasn't held liable if anybody was injured, and that was all thrown out the window. Now you want to spend $200,000 on a skateboard park. You can't even maintain the Humboldt Park, and we have crime going on there. Yes, crime going on at the church on Cupola Road in the back parking lot. And you want to add these other parks? Who's going to maintain when you don't even maintain the ones that already existed?
I don't know why you're addressing this to me. I'm not making
Well,
a decision. I mean, you're staring at me.
Well,
This
I'm
isn't my
looking at all
decision.
the board.
Okay,
I'm
just-
looking at everybody. I'm sorry.
I mean, what,
I'm not signaling you out.
I will, to the point of the public having input on what facilities, like a skate park, those type, there's absolutely no ability to hold a referendum on that question. The public can always give its input to the board in public forums, but that's not something that the board can hold a referendum as to what the public wants. I think there was a survey conducted during the Park and Rec comp plan a few years ago. I have no idea what the format was for it. I'm sure lots of people have no idea it happened, but that was done to ask what types of facilities people want. Just kind of to that point.
But prior to the monies being earmarked out of open space, according to the gentleman from Land Preservation, the money is earmarked, and the stakes right in there is for open space. But the township is taking money, is siphoning money out for other projects. But we, taxpayers, should have a say. Put a ballot out or a brochure and see. If 5 people outweigh the board of 3 people, then the 5 people should be in favor of not having the park erected. It shouldn't be you 3 people dictate where the money is spent when it's our tax dollars that are being taken to fund it.
So
I wouldn't mind having the money go towards Humboldt Park and upgrade Humboldt Park and have it at 100% usable surface where somebody's not getting injured. Because that's a liability for the township if somebody gets hurt. They can come back and sue the township.
To the point that we're trying to make on the referendum would be to say, we have this dedicated EIT. Its purpose was originally presented to the community as farmland preservation. Do we want to continue with this EIT tax, but to cover a broader area, parks and recreation?
And let people vote on it.
Yes.
But then, what I'm understanding from you is at that basis or consensus as it is now, the money is not to be used for open space, according to what the land preservation guy has stated earlier in this meeting. It's the black and white says it's to go to open space. Now there's a new thing that was adopted by the state saying you could take money out, but the township acknowledged and agreed to for open space only.
I think, the clarification on that was that when Honeybrook Township adopted the EIT, the definition for open space did not include the parks and rec. So a subsequent legislative session provided that clarification. So it was after we voted on it. So although we do have the ability to abide by that and say, that's the definition, it does include parks, but to our point was that what was presented to us in 2005, what we voted for was because of all the urban growth that's coming out, the sprawl coming out in our direction. We want to protect farmland. We want to keep this beautiful area rural. And I think that's pretty much what the question is all about. The referendum question will be about.
Well, and just to clarify my comment, I do think that politically, it probably is the right way, even if legally there's, a defense because the law changed.
Yeah.
I think politically it makes a lot of sense.
I have a question for you,
Yes.
so if I understood what you said, you said that we would have to pose the referendum question as, do you want to discontinue EIT tax? And that would be one question.
I mean, I think there's no clear answer to this, right? So there's nothing that tells you how to change the open space tax that you have in place in the law. And so people have kind of made it up as they've gone along. I haven't seen any of them challenged and thrown out where it has been modified, but it's not by the letter of the law. If we did this in this township, I would word it as an amendment. Essentially, do you wish to expand the stated purpose of the 2005 approved referendum for a 0.5% tax, originally approved for open space and land preservation, to also allow funds to be used for a park recreation, maintenance, park and recreation maintenance type fund, or something of that nature. I would do it as an amendment. If you want to do this, I would do it as an amendment.
So we couldn't possibly get rid of the EIT altogether by having as a referendum, correct?
I think if you follow the exact letter of the law of what referendums are authorized, that's the only way to do it, would be a clear denial, a repeal, and then put a new one in place with the proper purpose. But I think that's way too risky. And I don't think that it's really going to be challenged if you do it by referendum, because the public has had a chance to weigh in. And if they, as long as we word it properly.
The amendment, not repeal and reinstate.
Yeah, I think to make it clean, there's not a great way to word I've seen lots of referendum language that's deliberately confusing, but even when you try to make it clear, people don't know what they say, and they screw it up. Right, so I think it's most clean if we did it, if we said, do it as, essentially amending the purpose to expand the scope of the approved purpose. And if the referendum comes back with a no, then nothing changes, no amendment occurs, and it continues as it is today.
Question,
But that amendment would be permanent, so once we open that floodgate, that means at any time in the future, the township decides they want to use that money, they can. It's not closed, it's not just doing it for this one time. You're saying, let's open it up, and it's open forever. Well,
That's
not
correct.
what I don't think that's what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to say, just this one time.
I'm not sure what you mean by just this one time. I mean, as of now, I don't, creating a maintenance fund, which was one of the things that was discussed and was tabled by the board, but that was, a maintenance fund is something that should be, you're going to spend money, it would have to have some refueling capacity. It's not just to spend $100,000 one time. And if that's what's happening here, don't do this. I mean, if you're only looking to spend $100,000 on something, you know what I mean? If long-term you want this to be a solution to some of the township's park maintenance needs, I think it is appropriate to do it by resolution, or by referendum, rather. If that's not your goal, then I don't think it's necessary, and you shouldn't be doing it that way.
So I think there should be a fine line to where the township residents can say, no, we don't want that much money. You should be able to propose a proposal or a bid for whatever your project's going to be. And we, the people, come into the meeting like we are tonight and say, look, okay, we approve the expenditures that you're asking for. Just don't vote on it yourselves without the authorization, or because you're elected by us to represent us and to spend our money. So why not? It used to be that way years ago in the township when Lee Heller was on Parks and Recreation and stuff. You sent out the surveys and asked what we would like. Then he came up with a dollar value of the concession stand, and the townspeople voted on it, and it was approved, and it was done. And the upkeep of the park hasn't been done for God knows how many years, which it does need to be addressed before you add another pickleball pool. Take and refurbish what you got.
There's nothing that stops the township from doing surveys. It's just that a legal referendum is the only
We
way.
like to
that-
say where the money's being spent, because we're the taxpayers that fund these projects.
I mean, if every time, we would have to do a referendum for every single project, so every 6
Now,
months.
where
there's
the
a
referendum is for the open space and taking the money earmarked for open space as a kitty for you to keep reaching in and servicing all these other projects without our authorization
I think,
or our agreement.
if I could just jump in for a second, we do have, someone else wants to make a comment. It's essentially just to say that we authorize the money for the farmland preservation. We do have the opportunity to use it for parks and recreation, but it would be a good situation if we did get the feedback from the residents in a referendum to say, yes, go ahead, or no, and I think that's essentially what we're trying to accomplish here tonight. I mean, to Shane's point, he's the steward over the land preservation program, and this would help him determine that role. So,
Yeah, John, thanks. I'm listening and hearing everybody get very lost in the weeds here. Everybody's going off in different directions and like that. It is very simple. In 2005, the township could redo this one thing, land preservation. Whatever the state did does not matter. If they change the game, then it has to be revisited. To do otherwise, to start playing with money, no this way, that way, we just want to keep the status quo, we have a pot and we is dishonest. Put a referendum out there, let people decide again. If they say, sure, no problem, then it's fine, it's no problem. But to do it without the people's consent is wrong.
this program's been 17 years, and it's, the municipalities, where the residents have invested a lot of money in this.
I've been saying to try to find ways to enable a way to do this out here that is wrong. Just put it out there, put people in charge of rules, and we go forward.
So we're looking at 2 questions.
So, according to public participation and community engagement here, when we asked people what they wanted, they had a digital recreation questionnaire, which we had 206 people respond to. I believe according to this, this was in 2018. And then we had a non-digital version, also a paper questionnaire, which we had, 20 individuals completed the survey. So the problem is in how many, what's our percentage of people that actually vote in the township?
If your election, you may get 20 to 25%.
Do you use a third-party vendor to actually send out an official survey?
Well, in a case like that I think was conducted with Brandon Wine Conservancy. The first one I know because I wrote that first survey, and we did it at the Twin Valley Elementary Center, and we got about 50 people to respond.
So it's whoever walked by. That's not a survey.
Yeah. So, like I said, if we have the opportunity to put the question out there on a referendum, hopefully people, when they vote, they'll take enough time to turn over the paper and see that there's referendum questions and respond to them. But to the point, I think it is, listening to the conversations that we've had lately, let's get this question answered once and for all. We have a good land preservation program for farmland protection. If we want to continue that with parks, let's get some feedback from the residents, that's all.
Well, I think since 2018, technology has changed and it's easier to survey people with digital surveys.
And you can vote
many
2 or 3 times on that survey. I mean, that's another thing too. So, it really just comes down to one thing. You have a request from the residents of the community. I think this would be an opportunity to assure them that the voice is being heard. It may not be the full contingent of the residents of the community. As to your point, if we do a digital survey, we may get more participation, but I still think, even though the referendum may be a little old-fashioned, it's still part of our, right to vote.
Legal system.
So,
It's fine.
yeah.
I mean, I will just chime in. The other option is if you don't want to use this money for this purpose, then you probably don't need it. And just, right? I don't know where the board's feeling is. I mean, the concept of doing this was tabled previously. There wasn't action to move in that direction, so I don't know if the board even.
We hadn't actually made a decision whether we were going to
Whether
use that
you
money
wanted
for
to
parks
do it or not. And I mean, it is the board's, who knows, maybe the public wants that money, rather than just sitting in a bucket to be used for that purpose so that our parks are better. Maybe that is the answer. So,
Well, I've heard a couple people say that we need our task force. And if we don't use the money that's in that fund, or the money that fund has generated in interest, let's say, then how is that getting paid for?
So that's where we have voice of the people, and we say, yeah, we should, I would say, Aaron?
Yeah, so my feeling is land preservation money should only be used for land preservation, end of story. I think parks and recreation should be part of your budget. There should be money in your budget, that money in your general budget, that would come from, the land preservation tax is only generated from the earned income tax, from the people who are working in the township with a paycheck, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people could vote and say, yeah, we want the land preservation tax to go to parks and recreation maintenance, but because they don't have to pay into it. I think that parks and recreation maintenance, and it needs to happen, it just needs to be a line item in your budget every year, and that money should come from everyone in the township, not just people earning an income.
If I may, to your point, I have started this year with the board's approval, put $60,000 from the general funds into park maintenance. So,
And then,
not, point being is, the 5-year build-out essentially is for the board to give the treasurer and the manager direction. And by knowing what the board wants, I can find the money and I can find funding sources. That's the whole purpose of this 5-year build-out. So as we see, and again, this whole building the park with this DCNR funds, this matching grant, that was before my time. So when I came last year, I clearly stated that every single fund should be furnished appropriately with an ongoing continual fund. So this year, we are moving $60,000 from our general fund, which comes just from our general EIT and our, your regular township tax, and $60,000 is going to that. No land preservation funds are going to use it. Come this budget season, and again, the question comes back to the public input, the budget is open in workshops. I, as a manager, want community feedback to see how you want to see your money spent. So your opportunity to give the board who's is elected to represent all of the residents of Huntingburg Township, when you show up and you give your input to them, and they give it to the treasurer and I, that's how the budget is made, and that's how the funds for the township are spent, with your input.
sure, no, I get that.
So I just want to make sure everyone knows, there are $60,000 in this year to potentially resurface and fix gym equipment and resurface tents. So the idea that there's no money there is.
But there hasn't been in the past, is what I'm
And I
saying.
cannot speak to anything that has happened before my tenure here. All I can tell you
But
is
that's
that,
where the money should come from, if you ask me.
and I completely agree with you, and I've clearly dictated, and the board has talked about this in our budget workshops, which were all public. Clearly, Paul Jansen, who worked with me, agrees that if we fund specific funds, we should find a general revenue source to pay for that.
Yeah.
So part of my goal as a manager is to do exactly what I'm hearing from the community here, is fund that through the generalized tax.
Yeah.
Okay? So, understand that's in progress.
So you're saying you're not supporting taking land preservation money out of that account to Parks and Rec? Is that
No,
what
it's
you're
an
saying?
option for the board. I don't have a decision in that. Again, steps that occurred before me, and I think Shane and I had spoken in a board when I first went to one of the land preservation meetings that I was unaware of, that yet when I came on board last year, the previous administrator had set aside another $400,000 transfer, which I did not make. I've clearly said many times I came here for the land preservation program.
Yeah, and
So-
that, I think we also need to revisit, I think there's like $5 million in that land preservation account right now. I think we really need to consider, and I've talked to Shane about this, what the end game is. There's a lot of money going into that account, and there's a lot of interest building up, and we've made a lot of progress, and I'm really thankful, for all the open space, but at some point, we either need to reduce that or repeal it and say, there's just not a lot of applications coming in. We're never gonna get to 100%. I
We
think
never
we
will,
do that.
but I think I
But
said.
how much money do we need to have in that fund?
So what I said is that when my tenure started, we were just ending COVID. So I will not, as a manager, use the 2 years prior to mine when we had shut down, we didn't have a farmer's breakfast. And maybe people weren't as aware because we did not have the farmer's breakfast, which Shane can tell you is our opportunity to kind of sell this program. So I'm not comfortable saying because I started in, 2020 and we got out of COVID and, I saw no applications that we should cut it. But I've had discussions with Beth and with the board that, if Shane said we only get 1 or 2 applications over the next year or two, we think maybe we've reached the peak, and we have $5, $6, $7 million in that fund, that maybe it's the opportunity to think about turning off the tax, and then just writing an amendment saying that we will continue the land preservation until those funds are exhausted,
Yeah.
with preserving.
And that's what I'm saying, I think we're getting close to that, so maybe all of this other,
But to your point here, if I may, that's the question that we've been trying to get an answer to from a long time. So, looking at the presentation I did, I said that the potential cost for the municipality would be about $50 million, but half of that, it's been a 50-50 deal, so that's $25 million the township would need. We spent something like, 15, maybe about $12 million, something. So I think the numbers, I'd have to sit down and go through those numbers again, but approximately $10 million would be needed to buy the remaining easements. So that's something Shane and I could go over and verify those numbers. But, that's putting us at the point where if 100% of the remaining farms,
right.
but to our point, we know that
Never
it's not gonna happen. So, yeah, if we have $4.5 million right now, it's could
But
go
is
to
it
$6, $7,
generating
$8 million,
interest?
and we may not even use half of that. So,
I mean, I
and
think
that's a
it's
strong
couple
concern
years.
for all of us. So I think really, to wrap this up, the point we said, put a referendum out to the voters in November, if that's something that we feel would be productive. We gotta start winding this down. I have one more comment. Go ahead.
I just would like us to refocus, we went right over law enforcement because that wasn't allowed, you said, by referendum, but, we're spending a lot of time and energy focusing on, let's build parks, let's maintain parks, but we don't, we want to be risk adverse in terms of the racetrack, but we're not risk adverse in terms of making sure we have law enforcement and protection to make sure all of these parks are safe. Let's put the cart, not put the cart before the horse. We have to make sure we have law enforcement. Let's focus on spending our money to keep this community safe before we start building parks.
Okay. So as far as the referendum items, just kind of close this out for now, that we have 2 potential questions, and as far as the law enforcement, and we can initiate another law enforcement task force. We already have an interest from some of the surrounding municipalities that would like to partner with us. We can get some prices as to, what the options are, how much it would cost, and how much we can afford. And that should be one of our priorities going forward for 2023. Also, to move ahead, as far as the EAC, I do have an ordinance, but I just feel that the best direction with the EAC at this point will be to have the residents form their own committee, reach out to the Northern Chester County EAC. They have a good program that would help interested residents in that direction. Finally, on the internship, I don't think we're going forward on the internship after all, even though we did identify a potential candidate for that. So that was other new business that I had to offer. Trace, do you have any other new business?
Well, hang on a second. I think we just went somewhere else completely. What about the parking, funding? Are we going to finish that conversation?
What to what point?
I mean, if you want a referendum of any sort on the ballot in November, you would need to pass a resolution on the open space tax. The board needs to approve a resolution authorizing the referendum, if you want to do it.
Well, couldn't we decide right now, because it was tabled, what we were going to use, if we were going to use land preservation funds for parks and rec preservation. But if we do have some clear way to fund parks and rec and through our general fund, and not from land preservation. You know,
I don't want to, I think what we have to say is the board is interested in doing the maintenance funds, we would do a referendum. But that is not currently being discussed by the board. And asking if you want to spend tax on open space for park maintenance, if you don't know how the vote's going to come back on, and if it comes back yes, as the comment has clearly said, that door is then open in perpetuity. So you might be making a problem to something that's, you might be making a solution to a problem that's not currently being addressed. I think the board has agreed to, that they're not interested in talking any further about utilizing open space funds because, you know, we've reviewed the initial ordinance and it clearly does not mention it. And as Beth has clearly said, because the state law has changed, if we wish to change the reason why we want to spend that money, it's clean that way. I think the board has agreed that that's not a topic they're interested in going down right now. And I think if you make that resolution, you might open the door that you expected to remain closed.
Yeah. Finally, the last thing I'll just say on it, what I heard tonight, that the residents feel that they would like a say on how that tax is spent. So we could,
And I don't believe anybody is interested in spending it other than as it currently stands with land preservation law.
why don't we just go ahead, we have the two questions, it comes up next month, we vote for one or both or none at this point, because
Well,
it is getting rather late
a
in this.
motion to give authorization to Beth to do it because it will involve some.
Right.
Okay, I think you need to ask for a motion for each of those separate.
Okay, and let's close it out. I make a motion for the first question, expand the board from 3 to 5 members. Do I hear approve on that?
no,
Not hearing a second, I'll make a motion to approve, but I don't have a second.
And then, did you want to do the second the referendum, or do
Second
you want to
one,
do
okay,
that?
so- On the second question, do you want to go ahead with a referendum question on the ballot in November?
that says,
That covers the land preservation funding, whether it be used for land preservation, for farmland preservation only.
Well, you don't need a referendum for that.
Okay.
That already exists.
Sorry, I'm getting tired on this one.
I think if you're going to amend the purpose
Yes.
and want to use it for something other than the
Or
open
give open
space,
space for the
and
use
its
of.
originally stated
park,
purpose,
yes.
that is, if the board wants to do that, that is the referendum. You need to amend it to use it for something additional.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
no, I don't think we need a referendum.
Okay.
I think
I
we
will-
agree.
I will second it, I'll say I approve, so you don't have a second for your motion. Okay. We're now at old business, I don't see anything listed for old business, and now we finally get to open forum. I'll try, again, we'll start with the Zoom. Dan, do you have anything? Okay, no one else? On this side of the room, do we have any questions, comments for tonight? Yes, Shane, go ahead.
One last quick thing. A few months back, Adam Slovic, who is here tonight, presented a compelling batch of carefully researched scientific evidence that D.R. Horton was basically planning to build their townhouses in a wetland. I've never seen or heard of any follow-up on that. I'm not sure if that was forwarded on to the planning commission, but I just wanted to remind everybody quickly that it happened and that it's in all our best interest to pursue that and follow up on it before we've got a sinking batch of abandoned townhouses that are rotting over the top of graves of a bunch of bulldozer-inverted box turtles. Thank you.
I think to answer you, because I believe that the wetlands are not correctly delineated on the current plan, which is in the 36-page review that Technicon gave us, and I don't think they've addressed that as far as I know. So we don't have any information on it to give you. That's
Okay.
the same answer.
I just hadn't seen anything. Yeah.
We haven't either.
And they know they have to give that to us. That, it came up yet again. we're not letting it go. Mike brought it up, right off the top. It's one of the first critical issues that they really need to give the township is all of their information, as a starting place to support what they've put on the plan. And we don't have that yet, and they have to give that to us, and they acknowledge that that's coming.
Okay, looking at the time. Questions from the side of the room? Yes.
More of a comment than a question. It's mentioned just a few minutes ago that no one seems to want to use the land preservation fund for funding parks and recreation for repairs. There's been multiple meetings where that was discussed and talked about and said, what a great idea it is, we have this available funds. We have it on tape, we know you said it. So one way or another, are you going to take the money out of the land preservation fund to do this because we have several meetings of tape where you said, yes, that sounds like a great idea.
I think we were discussing.
You were, no,
I don't think we made any decisions.
We will hold.
I think, well, I was here, so I know what the tape
Yeah,
says.
I know what it says there.
Great. So we discussed it. I don't think we made any actual final decision. Is that what happened?
It was identified as an option. Before brought it to the board to discuss.
But 5 minutes ago, we were just told that nobody's talking about doing one. You're still talking, and you just said again, you're still talking about it. So one way or another,
The
you've
decision
got it.
wasn't finalized.
One way or another, you need to make a decision and not run this into the summer where it's too late for a referendum if you want to go down that path.
Just like, oh, here.
I just want to say, I'm glad that we finally brought up the issue of township liability, because we need to also consider that when it comes to the skate park, and also putting the D.R. Horton proposed park off of 322. There was just a child, a 10-year-old child, that was hit on the corner of Suckley and 322. We've had a lot more pedestrian accidents every year with all of this traffic going on. We need to consider liability when it comes to everything, not just the things that maybe we're against, everything.
Jen?
I was wondering where the $200,000 is coming from for the proposed skate park.
So Warren, we have a question on the 200,000.
So we have a matching $225,000 grant from the DCNR, the Division of Conservation and Natural Resources. And the township already has funds in the rec fund that covers the other half of it.
Okay.
Well, that definitely would have to come from land preservation then. Where did that come from?
What's that?
Where did that money come from? Because a couple of years ago, there wasn't any money in Parks and Rec.
Yeah, so we had fee and lieu from Honeybrook Estates come in. That was about $135,000 that came in last year.
But 10 minutes ago, you said the only money you had in that account was $60,000 for this year. In general budget.
That's absolutely not what I said. I said there's a transfer of $60,000 from general fund. I did not say that's all I absolutely did not tell you that's what is in that fund.
You said there was $60,000.
That's not what I said. I
Every
said-
budget this year, you allocated $60,000.
Correct. The transfer from general fund into rec does not tell you what the fund balance of that fund is. I did not.
But then there's no money to upgrade or refurbish Humboldt Park.
I didn't say that either.
What we can do.
Why don't we use that money, the $131,000 to redo Humboldt Park?
What we can do the next workshop is to pull the budget and show what is available in those different accounts.
That'd be a great thing, let us know where the money's coming from and where it's being earmarked. and what
The budget is a public document. You can look at it, you can request it.
But I've asked for documents in the past and I'm refused the right to know. And then I'm told to go.
I'm not talking about right to know, I'm talking about the budget. It's a public document.
This dockets, there's 11 things in here where the right to know has been denied by the township multiple times and don't fully go to Harrisburg.
Okay. Was it the budget?
You know, and
Was it the budget, was it not?
there was questions about budgets with Steve Landis.
Again, I can't speak with anything about before my time. The
But-
budget is a public document, it's on our website, actually, and it's available.
Matt?
Do we have a dollar amount on what it would take to fix Humboldt Park? Not do the redesign, but just do the maintenance on it?
I don't think we've made that a number, no. Jen?
Did the supervisors vote on the skate park, or was that just a decision arbitrarily made to just?
There was a commitment a few years ago, but as far as the final numbers,
The board did vote on it. It was part of the James Humboldt Memorial Park Master Plan that had been going on that Tracy had referred to earlier. There was numerous public meetings. There's an Humboldt Park Master Plan that's, I don't know, 60, 80 pages, which documents all of the public meetings that YSM Landscape, who had been contracted to do the study, had been involved in. It shows who was there, the mailings out, who responded, the public comment, the various sketch plans, and the various different phases. Park and Rec was involved in that. And this was a process that I believe took close to 2 years.
Okay,
it was all public meetings.
okay.
Any final questions before we call for an adjournment? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn. I'd like to make a comment.
Go right ahead.
At the unofficial other meeting that Valerie held with John,
Yes.
one of the people that came up to me at the end said, "I like to hear you talk. I feel like I don't know you. So if anybody here wants to come up and talk to me at the end of the meeting, you're welcome to. I just want to make it clear because, in fact, all we are is township residents, just like you. We just happen to be sitting in front of her."
All right, second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All right, we have a town hall meeting May 17th. We have, are we still conducting the Park and Rec the 18th? State skate park design meeting, 6 o'clock, May 24th. May 25th, planning commission, June 2nd, board supervisor workshop, and on June 14th, board supervisor meeting. Have a good night, thank you everyone for attending the meeting. This concludes our